Hello and a warm and wet welcome to Isaan Flicks. It has been a while since I released a video, and there's been a few reasons for that. The first being the weather. It has been rather wet and thundery of late, and another has been road constructions. But today I want to talk about the weather. Therefore, as always, I shall ask you to sit back, relax, watch the video, enjoy the scenery while I talk about the weather and climate change as I see it today. But first off, I should give you a view of the weather through one of our windows. Yes, it is raining again, but thankfully today, so far, no thunder or lightning, which is good. Speaking of thunder, only last week in Ubon Ratchathani province, 7 cows sheltering from the storm under a group of trees were killed by a single lightning strike. One often hears of cows and buffaloes being struck and killed by lightning in open fields, but 7 in one strike is a bit unusual. It is also because of lightning that has prevented me putting a video together, as in my house, when lightning is about, all electronic equipment such as TVs and computers in particular are unplugged. All this stems back to the good old days before mobile phones, satellite TV, and all we had back then was terrestrial television, which in those days required an external antenna erected as high as possible above the house on usually a steel pole held in place by steel tie wires. These antennas were often a magnet for lightning strikes, and if they did receive a strike and the coaxial antenna cable was plugged into the TV set, a very high voltage charge could spread throughout the building. The charge would pass through the TV set and on through the building's electrical wiring, and would most probably have smoked the TV set and a few other electrical items and equipment connected to the electrical installation. I do know this from personal experience, as when we lived in Pattaya and our antenna was struck by lightning on several occasions in a couple of different houses, causing damage to the TVs, stereos, refrigerators and other fixtures. Some items could be repaired, others were too badly burnt to repair and had to be replaced. I know this is not the case today, but old habits die hard, and I have never won an argument in my house, so we shall better leave it there. I would, however, like to hear your comments on today's changes to the weather or the climate in your part of the world. The weather and the climate are just two ways of looking at changes of the temperature, wind, rain and sunshine. So what is the difference? When we talk about the weather, we generally mean the day-to-day changes in a certain place. When we talk about the climate, we usually mean the usual or unusual weather in a certain place. There are of course scientists called meteorologists who study the weather, and there are some scientists called climatologists who then study the climate, and many of those believe it takes between 30 and 100 years to understand the climate of a certain place. Therefore, we do have two different scenarios. Climates are different, of course, from one place to another, such as the north or northeast of Thailand has a different climate to that of southern Thailand, and that's just one example. Climate all over the world changes with time. Only some 20,000 years ago, ice covered large areas of Europe, Asia and North America. Furthermore, our climate is still changing today. Many of the so-called experts think that human actions, such as burning fossil fuels, are causing some of the changes. And I believe this to be true, to a point. Many people also think the weather is something like a machine, inasmuch as the Earth's air or atmosphere acts like machinery using sunshine as fuel. Being as the Earth is round, the sun's heat is hottest at the equator, as it goes through the least amount of air. At the poles, there is more air for the sun to pass through, and then spreads over more land, so there is a lot less heat. Then, land heats up and cools off more quickly than the sea does. In the tropics, land and sea are usually always warm. Closer to the poles, the sea is cooler than the land in the summer, but warmer than the land in the winter. When the sun heats the air, it also heats the sea. This, of course, makes some of the seawater evaporate and rise into the air as moisture. When the moist air rises higher, it cools off, and then the moisture condenses or turns into drops, forming clouds. If the clouds cool, the water in them makes larger drops or crystals that fall as rain, snow, or hail. There are three basic cloud types: cirrus, cumulus, and stratus, and maybe I could make another video about them. However, back to the drops or precipitation, which is all forms of water that falls to the ground from the clouds. Meteorologists list as many as 11 types of precipitation, but for most people there are just three: rain, hail, and snow. As I mentioned, all precipitation starts the same way, by ice particles or tiny water droplets joining together. Some experts have said it can take 1 million droplets to form one raindrop, which is a bit hard to imagine. However, as the droplets grow larger, they become heavier enough to fall to the ground. Ice particles may melt and fall as rain, but if the air is cold, they usually fall as snow or hail. Snow is more common, of course, in cold winter weather. But hailstones are heavy and fall rapidly, so often they reach the ground still frozen, even in summertime. Then, of course, we have the wind, the highs and the lows. Highs and lows bring different weather. Low pressure centres are called depressions, cyclones, or just lows. The centres of high pressure are called anticyclones or just highs. Lows usually have heavy clouds and strong winds. Lows bring rain and even storms. Highs have a few clouds and light winds, and usually means to expect good weather. However, the wind does not blow evenly, as friction with the Earth's surface makes the wind gusty. Gusts are very uneven, and places only 100 meters apart may have very different winds at the same time. When the wind is gusty, it can and usually does change direction. It can veer, change direction in a clockwise direction or back, and then change to an anti-clockwise direction. In the northern hemisphere, winds over land tend to speed up and veer during the day and slow down a little at night. However, over the open seas, winds do not change as much. Winds grow strongest when a depression develops. Lows suck in the air at the bottom and hurl it out at the top. The steeper the low, the stronger the wind. Which brings me on to tropical storms, which got me started on this video in the first place. Or, in fact, the recent thunderstorms we have been experiencing. Most people will know that thunderstorms develop in dark, towering clouds. Then violent currents of air rush up and down these clouds, causing static electricity to build up in them. After a while, this static electricity produces a large spark. This is lightning. Then the lightning suddenly heating the air causes thunder. To find out how far away a lightning flash is, count the number of seconds between seeing the flash and hearing the thunder. Then divide the number of seconds by 3 to get the distance in kilometers, or divide the number of seconds by 5 for the distance in miles. However, most of the violent weather takes place as tropical storms. These develop over the sea, but may move over land where they can do terrible damage. In the Caribbean Sea and the North Atlantic, these types of storms are called hurricanes. They are called cyclones in the Indian Ocean and typhoons in the Northern Pacific Ocean. A tropical storm can be hundreds of miles wide with winds blowing over 290 kilometers or 180 miles per hour. Then there are tornadoes, which are funnels of wind that swirls around at up to 800 kilometers, 500 miles an hour across land and can suck up everything in its path, including buildings and vehicles. However, all of what I have just said is more or less normal, right? But are some of these events, which are now happening more often, due to global warming, or is it just due to normal climate change? I do have my thoughts on global warming, which I may express in another video. Whatever the weather, if you need to know what the weather is doing, simply go outside and look for yourself. But joking aside, weather forecasting is another ball of war that requires so much collected data to make any real forecast. Well, I think that is about enough on weather or climate for today's video. However, there is so much more to understanding weather and the Earth's climates, and perhaps that could make another video. However, before I go, I would like to ask if anyone else has thoughts about the current extreme weather currently occurring around the globe. The heavy rain, floods, tornadoes and hailstorms in North America, the rain causing serious flooding and landslides in South America, floods in Europe and Russia, serious flooding in North Africa, Central Africa, and many countries across the Middle East are experiencing record-breaking flooding, landslides and rockfalls. Across the Gulf, Iran has had some serious flooding, rockfalls and landslides, as has Pakistan and India. There has been flooding in Laos. Malaysia has floods coupled with strong winds, while Indonesia has more flooding with seriously strong winds, while China is inundated with serious flooding and recently a typhoon. And there's crazy flooding in Japan, South Korea and the Philippines. And most likely Thailand will be next. But nothing unusual in that. All of what I have just said has only happened in the last couple of weeks and is currently ongoing. Oh, and I nearly forgot to mention, the UK is now experiencing a drought, the worst since 1976. Is all what I have just said normal climate change? We cannot ignore history and science. Or, on the other hand, is it that Mother Nature is kicking back at all the abuse Earth has endured over the past several decades from us human beings? But please do remember that not anything said or written is lies if you believe it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you would like to hear more about Earth's ever-changing weather and climates. Finally, if you did like and enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, share the video, leave me a comment and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so to ensure you do not miss out on our other videos. That's it until my next video, whatever the weather, and it is still raining here. Stay safe, and it's a very goodbye from me. Bye bye.